There are things a man can let slip. The bite of his first whiskey, the name of a friend he buried and mourned, even the sound of his wife laughing through the kitchen screen. But there are things that never leave, like the weight of a child dying in his arms. Jeb Carter hadn't spoken her name in years. Lily, his daughter, 8 years old. Fever stole her in 2 nights. Nothing he tried could stop it. He'd been a soldier, a fighter, but not a savior. After she passed, he walked away from Kansas, rode west without a plan, without a prayer, just running from the sound of her coughing. Ended up in the Arizona territory, alone, gutted, quieter than the dust around him. And on a day like any other, his horse stopped beneath a split mesquite tree. Something moved ahead, slow, wrong. Not an animal, not a man. It was a girl sitting, not lying, hands bound, head slumped. A burlap sack over her face like someone had tried to erase her. She didn't make a sound. Not at first. Then she whispered, "Please don't take the sack off." No fear in her voice, just exhaustion. The kind that seeps into your bones and stays, like she'd spoken those words 100 times before and no one had ever listened. Jeb didn't move fast, didn't talk. He just stood there, the wind kicking dust across his boots, and stared at her like he was looking into a grave that hadn't closed yet. Then he knelt. She flinched but didn't stop him. He reached out, pulled the sack off. What he saw cut deeper than any blade. Her face was torn, scars down one side, one eye swollen shut, the other wide, hollow. But it wasn't the wounds that hit hardest. It was what was in her eye. Not fear, not pain. Just that dead stillness, the kind that lives in someone who truly believes nobody will ever look at them again and care. Jeb didn't see a stranger. He saw something the world had thrown away, but not something he was ready to leave behind. She didn't speak the entire ride back. Jeb didn't ask a single thing. He wasn't the type to push when someone already looked like life had wrung them out and left them in pieces. He just rode slow. Let her lean when she needed. Let the silence do what silence does best. His cabin sat tucked near a dry creek bed outside Ruby. Old timbers, no neighbors, just wind and time. When they got there, he helped her down, careful, gentle. She walked on her own, shaky but proud, like someone who forgot what it meant to be helped. He offered her water. She didn't drink. Bread? She turned away. She found a corner, pulled the old sack back over her head, sat with knees hugged tight to her chest. Like the walls were still closing in. Jeb didn't push. He just left a bowl on the table, stepped outside, and started splitting wood like he did every evening. Same rhythm, same pace. Only this time he kept one ear tuned to the silence behind him. At sundown, the bowl was empty. Same thing the next morning. She didn't speak, didn't look at him. But the food vanished. Bread, then beans, then coffee. Small things. Not enough to call trust, but maybe enough to call hope. By the third night, Jeb left his old army coat hanging by her corner. The next morning, it was draped over her legs. The sack stayed on, but she was sitting straighter, breathing deeper. The kinds of changes most folks wouldn't notice, but Jeb had seen someone give up before. He knew what returning looked like. Somewhere between sunrise and sunset that day, he stopped seeing her as a problem. Started seeing her as a person making her way back from hell. There's a moment when broken creatures stop trembling long enough to meet your eyes, and that's when you know you're getting through. She looked at him like that once. Even with the sack on, he knew one thing for certain. She wasn't broken yet. She started talking more by the 5th day. Quiet but steady, like a stream finally carving its way through dry stone. Her stepfather's name came first. James Craig. She said it while peeling potatoes. Calm, but her hands shook. She told Jeb how it began after her mama died, How James called her cursed. Said the mark on her face was a punishment, locked her in, hit her. Then worse. One night she ran, but the town didn't ask why. They just called her a witch and lit the matches. Jeb didn't say much, just nodded, then stepped outside with a cup of coffee that went cold in his hand. Something inside him went still again, the kind of still that makes a man dangerous. Next morning he saddled up, told her he was heading into Tombstone for supplies. She didn't ask for anything, just handed him the last of the flour and went back to chopping wood. Tombstone was busy. Traders, gamblers, miners with eyes too tired for trouble. Jeb walked into the general store, nodded to the clerk, started filling a basket with what little he had coin for. Then he heard it. Two men by the oat sacks, talking low, laughing, said something about a girl with the devil's face hiding out in the hills. Said the old man she was with probably paid silver just to touch her. Jeb didn't look at them. Just set the basket down. Walked over. When he was done, the oat sack held more blood than grain. No one stopped him. No one spoke. He paid for the bread. Rode home with his fists still raw. Annie didn't ask what happened, but when she saw his hands, she soaked a cloth in cold water and held it to his knuckles. Didn't speak, just held it there until the bleeding eased. If breaking jaws was the price of quiet, so be it. But Jeb knew the real reckoning had only just begun. Justice doesn't always come with speeches. Sometimes it rides in silence, behind the sound of bone cracking. And if this story means something to you, keep listening, because what came next would test every ounce of that justice. It started with a whistle, not wind, not a bird. A sharp twoot, the kind used by men who didn't like to repeat themselves. Jeb froze, axe mid-swing. The hair on his neck rose before the horses even came into view. 3 of them. Dark coats, guns low at the hip, eyes that didn't blink enough. Annie was out back, hanging linens. Jeb gave her a look. Not fear, just readiness. She nodded once, slipped inside, just like they'd practiced. The men rode in slow. One dismounted, muddy boots, dirty face. He spat and said he was there for the girl, said she belonged to someone back in Prescott, said Jeb had no right to keep what wasn't his. Jeb didn't blink, asked once, calm, if they had papers. They laughed. The one on foot stepped closer, fingers twitching near his belt. Then came the click of a shotgun from inside the cabin. Annie stood in the doorway, barefoot, calm, the old double-barrel in her arms, aimed low, aimed sure. The man stopped cold. Jeb stepped down from the porch, boots crunching in the dirt. Didn't reach for his gun, just grabbed the man's wrist, twisted slow, until he was kneeling. Then leaned in, said something only Annie heard. The other 2 turned their horses and left without a word. The man on the ground stood up, pride shattered. Didn't look back. That night, Annie sat by the window, shotgun across her lap. Jeb didn't tell her to stop. Some nights, staying alive means reminding the world you still know how. Next morning, Jeb poured 2 cups of coffee. One black, one with honey. Just the way Annie liked it. She'd never said so, but he'd noticed the way her eyes softened with the sweetness, the way she cradled the mug like it mattered. The sun rose over the hills. For once, the wind stayed still. No riders, no dust, just quiet. They sat on the porch, side by side. No words. Sometimes peace doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it just arrives, sits down, waits. Annie had taken the sack off the night before. Her face still bore every scar, every story. But her eyes, they were different. They didn't beg. They saw. And for the first time in a long, long while, Jeb let himself believe. Maybe not everything lost stays lost forever. Around noon, he handed her a shovel. Together they planted tomatoes out back. not for food, just because it felt good to grow something. Some folks think love is loud, flowers, music, fireworks, but sometimes love is a garden, quiet, dug with sore hands, watered with silence. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Maybe it always was. So let me ask you this. What would it take for you to see someone not for who they were told to be, but for who they still might become? And if you've ever carried a scar the world said was too deep to heal, maybe this story was for you. If it meant something, share it. And if you want more stories like this, raw, real, and rooted in something deeper, stay close. Because out here in the sun, dust, and silence of the West, not every story ends in fire. Some just begin with coffee and a second chance.